We have a very important guest in the building with us today. We're going to be continuing the conversation on, having a very honest and sober adult conversation. We might have moments where we're joking and we're laughing in the studio, but also being an adult means being prepared to have very serious and adult conversations. So we wanted to make sure that as we continue this conversation and this dialogue around gender-based violence and harassment, that we have an open mind as we go into it and that we open up our hearts to be able to hear what our guest has to say. So without further ado, allow me to introduce him. We have Dr. Augustus Nzioki in the building, who is a researcher on intimate partner violence. And I'm so thankful that you were able to make it. Thank you so much. Hopefully you didn't have any issues arriving today.
I know.
Oh, fantastic.
Thank God.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. We're actually very, very excited to have you here today, primarily because of not just your professional experience, but also because I think you can shed light on a lot of the conversations we've been having. So we've actually just, we started the conversation off by looking at an article that I brought to the table. And it was an article of a gentleman who had reported having had experienced some sort of sexual harassment in the workplace. So I think having you here is a great opportunity to continue this conversation and, sort of learn a little bit more about particularly gender-based violence and some of the social impacts. So I guess to start off the conversation, please tell us about yourself and, how you sort of found yourself in this profession as a researcher.
Okay. Good evening, all.
Good evening, Daktari.
As you have seen, my name is Augustus Nzioki. I've been a teacher. And at one point I continued with my education. I've taught for quite a number of years, and but I had interest on, let's say, the less fortunate in the society, whether women, whether the old, whether the orphaned, whether the widows, the divorced, single mothers. I mean, this is a whole L. And because of that, I did a master's on issues to do with single parents, and I did my PhD in from a religious perspective again. This is a philosophy and religious studies at Pune University, and I majored, purely now on intimate partner violence.
Right.
But basically, we are saying there are so many forms of violence that are going on in our society, and the worst bit of it all is that the institutions that are supposed to speak against these injustices, these violences, they kind of, one reason or the other, reasons that we may be able to discuss maybe later, they tend to be silent. The church is silent, religions are silent, our leaders are silent. And you realize
our
that
offices are silent.
Our offices are silent. And so even as I was trying to listen, to the discussion that you had, do you know there are so many men who have been messed up? But because of our culture, and I think you understand our culture, when I talk about culture, we're talking about patriarchal beliefs, where the society respects, gives a lot of power, a lot of authority to men.
Yes.
And because of that, these people cannot speak.
Right.
And I believe it is a high time we, called spades a spade, came out and spoke against the issues that people are going through. And some of the issues I'm going to raise, from biblical perspective, will amaze you.
Yes.
You might want to know that even the Bible itself, because of the culture of how it, of the people who wrote it, these are Jews.
Right.
These are Jewish, a culture. It was so patriarchal.
Yes.
And for your information, we are saying Jewish culture or the major religions of the world, that is Islam, Hindu, Christianity, they are all patriarchal.
Right.
So even as we go even as we want to look at the role of religion, the society, we should understand that it is even those who wrote that book, and as I'll be quoting a few things from the Bible for you to know some of the verses, you realize that they were doing it from a patriarchal belief, from a patriarchal practice, and so that is now what is being used today. And I'm sorry, I'm a believer, I'm a pastor, but it is so bad when a sister reports a case to the pastor, and all she is told, and this person has been beaten, she has been done all kind of things.
You can see a black eye.
And she is told, go back,
and pray.
be more obedient, pray over it.
Yeah.
And what do we hear next? This woman has been killed,
Yeah.
the children have been killed, and that is what, made me.
Dr. Augustine, I reported to my pastor when I found myself with a black eye, a chipped lip, and I was told, Sister Barbara, let's pray on it. I will call you. I am still waiting for that call. It is 8 years later. So what you're saying is something that I can relate to. And we're in a society where both men and women tend not to believe, or they do not know where to go. Now, I would ask, what actually brings this drive? And I know there are many other reasons, but what do you think, what brings this drive of, and you've talked about the patriarchal culture, where intimate partners tend to just turn on each other?
A number of factors will play into that. But I want to tell you one thing psychologically. I've also done a bit of psychological studies. Now, the line between love and hatred is very narrow.
Right. The love between
The
line between
love and hatred. And that's why today you are very much into this person, and the next time you are hearing this person has killed this person.
Right.
So the moment a man discovers that the lady has left them, so it turns out now to be hatred. So the same person who called you kind of names can easily turn on you. But more importantly, we are talking about our culture. That's number one. And Kenyan culture, African culture, and I hope you people, you saw what happened during the COVID when the men, at the time in the houses.
Yes.
Maybe you may not be aware, but men, women, many children, they underwent, a lot of violence.
Yes.
Now, let me make it clear, because of our listeners, that when you talk about intimate partner violence, it's not about physical.
Yes.
People tend to look at it from a physical, abuse.
Yeah.
But when you talk about violence, we are talking about emotional,
Yeah.
we are talking about sexual, we
Yeah.
are talking about spiritual,
Yes.
we are talking about financial, we are talking about, curtail of movement, so that we are talking about threats. We are, this man is telling you, I'm going to marry, I'm going to do this. So
I will leave you.
I will leave you. So these threats, they cause this woman to undergo a lot of stress and some,
Agony.
they end up committing suicide,
Yeah.
or even getting into drugs. So what you're saying is, it's not just about physical. Anything done on you, whether threat, whether finances, their husbands will pick all the money from the woman and she's there, whether sexual, whether, coercive, whatever it is done. Now, that one we refer to as physical, intimate partner violence.
Right.
But I'm saying what causes it more, as you have asked, is that we have a lot of, we have our culture, which is again patriarchal.
Yes.
Now, that is supporting a lot of it. Then you have got poverty. Okay, then you have got ignorance. This is a woman, she has been raped, she wants to report this case, she goes to take bath. By the time you are reaching the police and all that, the evidence is gone. Is gone.
Yeah.
So we are saying, number one, our culture.
Yeah.
Number two, our the poverty that is in our society, and now religiously, the patriarchal practices and beliefs and things that are assumed to be biblical, which I'll be able to show you that they've got nothing to do with the Bible completely. So because of all that, we have seen many cases now coming up of intimate partner violence.
Right.
Yeah.
I see. No, I think it's so glad that we've started the show off on this note, because I think there's a lot of, I didn't even consider the point that you made about ignorance and how a woman can be in that position where she has been sexually assaulted, but then by the time it's actually being reported, maybe she's showered and she's tended to herself, and now a lot of that evidence is gone. So I think us having this conversation is something that's going to be very important, not just for us in the room, but also for our listeners to learn a little bit more about really what defines intimate partner violence, and also some of the societal impacts that come with that. So I'm really excited to actually get into this, because I also know a little bit about some of the research that you've done and the different industry, or the different fields or subfields within this space that you have looked at. So I'm really excited to get your thoughts and to really get into this conversation. Now we're going to be on air between now and 10 p.m. and we have our guest here for the entire time. So you also have an opportunity to join in on the conversation and ask some important questions that might be pressing on your brain. That is going to be from 9 p.m. We're going to be opening up our phone lines, which will be your opportunity to call in and ask the doctor any questions that you have around this. Again, we have Dr. Augustus in the building, who is a researcher on